The entire country is grieving, even if you don't know anyone who's been killed. No one ever imagined this kind of scenario. And as you said, I've been trying. It's a drop in the bucket, really, when you talk about 1,200 people. Israel has had many terror attacks over the years. And when those happen, the names and the faces of the dead are always so prominent, and everyone in the country sees them. And that can't happen here. It's not possible. 1,200 is not a number we can wrap our head around. And so even though I know I won't be able to get to even close to that, the attempt to tell some stories, to put a human face on this, to tell stories about people who have been killed, it's just, it's the least I can do at this point.
Tell me some of the people that you've written about have impacted you. What are the stories that stand out for you?
Everyone is devastating. There's, as you know, obviously there were hundreds of people who were gunned down at a music festival. People in their 20s just went out. It was a Jewish holiday. They wanted to have a good time. They're dancing in the desert. One of them is Isabella Gandlin. She's 27, and she was supposed to get married at the end of this month. And instead, she was buried this week, and her family all gathered for her funeral instead of her wedding. And that's something you can't forget. There's irony sometimes involved. There's a soldier, Dvir Elisha, who was killed. And he was actually born in Gaza back before the disengagement. He lived in a Jewish settlement, which was then called Gush Katif. He left when the disengagement happened. He moved, and now he was killed right there. And again, it's just things you can't wrap your brain around.
Yeah. Many families don't yet know the fate of their loved one, and that must be incredibly difficult to endure, whether they've been taken hostage, whether they are wounded, whether they may have died, and that is yet to be uncovered.
Yeah, the fact is, a big reason that the death toll in Israel is rising so sharply is not a large number of people still being killed every day, but it's just bodies still being found. It's just entire families slaughtered in their homes who, they just haven't been able to get to them yet. And so there are still a lot of families who are still trying to find out where their loved ones are, if they're in a hospital, if they're dead, and if they may even be in captivity in Gaza. And there's still so much uncertainty and unknowns around that.
You talk about how it is so hard to wrap your head around the numbers. Israelis, though, had to a degree a sense of security. Has this changed it forever, do you think?
I don't think Israel will ever go back to the Israel that it was on October 6th. That country doesn't exist anymore. The fact was that nobody saw this coming. Nobody thought that this was possible. For years, every prime minister, every IDF chief, every defense minister has stood up and said, we're ready for every scenario. We're prepared. We're in control. And that was not true. That was so very obviously not true. So, and right now, obviously, the biggest front is the Gaza border, but the situation with the Lebanon border is also something that's obviously concerning. And I think the images of a multi-front war are really terrifying and feels like an existential threat.
And that's a difficult question I want to ask you. Do people feel this unconditional response from the government? Do they feel that that's what they want, what they expect, or are they concerned it will lead to a place that there is no return from?
I can't speak for 10 million people. I don't know what people want, and I don't know what is going to happen. There's certainly, the idea that that there are international, bodies calling for a ceasefire is, to Israelis out of the question. The idea that we're going to now, have 1,200 people dead and not respond and not attempt to take out the Hamas infrastructure that was so vastly underestimated is not in question. Where we go from here, I don't know. Obviously, Israeli officials have implied that we're working towards a long operation, probably a ground invasion, but there's still questions remain. And I think Israelis feel that, again, I can't speak for all of them, but I think a great many feel that we can't not knock out essentially all of the Hamas leadership and all of the Hamas infrastructure, because we have seen now what happens if we don't.
Yeah. And the fact that there had been some division, and particularly a good deal of Israeli society had been divided about the path that Benjamin Netanyahu was going down, particularly a lot of the political reform around the courts. Do you think this has changed that dynamic, that this has now united people?
Yeah, I don't think people are even thinking about that anymore. The fact that a week ago that was always our biggest story and that was what people were thinking about seems like a completely different planet to where we are now. Certainly people feel more united. Certainly those questions are kind of just irrelevant at this point, not on the agenda in any way. Where we'll go from here, how we'll go from here. They're still talking about this emergency unity government, even though it's been 4 days. So the emergency doesn't seem to have motivated them that much. But, things are obviously going to be hugely different.
Yeah. And the prospect of a ground offensive, that could come at the cost of many Israeli defense forces. Would the people have an appetite for that? Or, as you say, do they feel that there is no choice? I know you can't speak for everyone, but is there a feeling that there is no choice?
I think so. Yeah, I think every Israeli is aware that a ground invasion carries a heavy human price on the Israeli side. On the Gaza side, we're not, no one here is reveling in the loss of human life. That's, something we've always felt. But no one in Israel thinks that we can sit by and have 1,200 people slaughtered and not respond in some way. Because if you don't respond, then there's nothing stopping it from happening again.
Do you think there should be a distinction? Is there a sense that they need to make a distinction and have some form of humanitarian corridor for civilians in Gaza while at the same time trying to eliminate Hamas?
That's certainly possible. I know there's always a lot of talks. There's a lot of, regional people involved. Obviously, the U.S. is heavily involved. Gaza has a border with Egypt. Gaza has always had a border with Egypt. And so Egypt has a significant role to play here that it sometimes does not want to do. Qatar is involved in talks. It's certainly something that's possible. Can I say that it's a priority for the IDF right now? I don't think it is. But I know that, there's a lot of different figures involved. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken is on his way here. We'll just see what happens.
Yeah. So difficult to just even begin to imagine what life is like there at the moment. We send you our heartfelt thoughts and prayers.
Thank you.